The Football Kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Alright, you're very welcome along to this week's episode of The Football Kickoff with Sky. We're live across Off the Ball social channels at 11:30 every Friday morning, looking at the best 5 games on telly over the weekend. I'm going to run through these really quickly just so you know what's on, but I think we're going to be largely focused on the big game on Sunday. Manchester City versus Newcastle kicks off tomorrow morning at 12:30 on BT Sport. Arsenal versus Bournemouth is 3 o'clock on Premier Sports. Southampton and Leicester is 5:30 on Sky Sports. On Sunday, the early kick-off, Nottingham Forest versus Everton at 2, with Nathan Murphy and Keith Treacy on commentary duty for that one. And Liverpool versus Manchester United at 4:30 with obviously the Dream Team on commentary for that one. I don't know what happened there. Stephen Doyle and Kenny Cunningham on duty for that one. Keith Treacy, you didn't make the cut for the big game. Jesus.
No, I think they're linking me with Dyche. They want all the Dyche stories. So look, I'm happy enough. I do think that's obviously, look, Liverpool United, everybody wants to watch that, but I think the Everton one is just as interesting as well. I think it's a big 6-pointer.
Well, it's massive now that Everton's form has deserted them ever since the first game. But we'll get to that, right? Let's start with Liverpool versus Manchester United because it's clearly the big game of the weekend. Phil, you have you're one of the few people in the world who managed to do some scouting on the videotape of the Liverpool game against Wolves.
Against Wolves, yeah. So what I took out of it, Van Dijk had a good game. Obviously he scored, but Konate was back, and that is Liverpool's best central defensive partnership. But they've barely played together this season. I think that was only the 5th time they've started together this season. So it's no coincidence as well. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold had one of his best games of the season because he has Konate. He knows Konate is there. So if he goes roaming forward, which he's encouraged to do, he knows that Konate is there, and it's not Joe Gomez or Joel Matip. And look, I'm a big fan of Joel Matip, but just not having a good season, and that's pretty much since day one. He had a bad game away to Fulham on the opening weekend, and Jota, he hasn't scored, but just that energy he's brought in, they're starting to press properly again from the front. So he went with Nunez, Jota and Salah as his front 3, and I think he might stick with the same 3. Gakpo came on, he played a part in the second goal, but just Liverpool are at their best when they're pressing from the front, so Jota gives them that. Nunez obviously scored, but it was disallowed, and I was just thinking, he's only scored 1 goal into the cup, and that was against Napoli, and he it was on the line. Any of us could have scored it. When I say any, I mean myself or yourself, Ger, obviously.
He definitely would have.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking he hasn't had that big moment
and
where
it's been taken away from him again. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, is he saving himself for Sunday? But they just look so much better when he's back in the team. The energy he gives them, and he causes defenders a few problems because they know that his pace is frightening. He wasn't there against Palace last weekend, and I can honestly say that Palace-Liverpool game last Saturday was one of the worst I've seen this season.
A clean sheet though, 3 clean sheets in a row for them.
Yeah, if you forget the Real Madrid game.
Yeah, in the league.
Yeah. I know, but it's one of those where Liverpool
I think sometimes you do have to forget the Real Madrid game in a way. Like
it's like Real Madrid have forgotten it, because I watched Real Madrid last night against Barcelona and they were so bad.
Yeah,
they lost 1-0 at the Bernabeu.
Copa del Rey. Well, we're only Champions League winners, big time Charlies.
Yeah, that's it. Well, interesting. Barcelona basically just stopped Vinicius, and Liverpool couldn't do that.
Yeah. How do you think Liverpool are faring out at the moment, Keith? Like, what's your assessment of the reality of where they are?
The reality is, look, it hasn't been a very good season. There's been a couple of false dawns where you think maybe they're turning the corner, maybe they're coming back to the old Liverpool. They did well against Wolves. They defended an awful lot better. Van Dijk got a goal. But the big one for me was Jota up front. They did look an awful lot more dynamic. They look more of a threat. Jota doesn't get on the score sheet an awful lot, but he stretches people, and it's not just he's attacking, it's the way he presses as well. It's such a big weapon. Everybody talks about the press and then the counter press and the counter press on the counter press. Jota's very, very good at that, but I can't see. I know Liverpool look a little bit better, but I can't see anything other than United win. United are answering all the questions. Beat Barcelona over 2 legs, won the cup during the week, and even against West Ham, you're thinking they go 1-0 down, some of their bigger players are on the bench, you're thinking, right, let's see what you're all about now. Ten Hag makes a couple of changes and all of a sudden they win the game 3-1, and it was just brilliant. And I think United have scored 12 goals in the last 5 games, only conceded 4. Rashford's in form. Casemiro looks brilliant. I think Casemiro will boss the midfield. I think he'll absolutely boss the midfield, and then United will go and win the game from there.
Let's talk about Casemiro, because I think, Phil, you're relatively confident that Liverpool are not just going to put in a performance here, but actually win the game.
I think there's certain fixtures that sometimes can be good for a team, and that's how I felt about United and Liverpool at Old Trafford earlier this season. Yeah, where United had just got beaten 4-0 by Brentford, and everyone thought Liverpool are going to go to Old Trafford and win, but Liverpool had drawn a couple of games. They'd drawn against Fulham and they'd drawn at home to Palace, and United were brilliant that night, and that just kind of kick-started everything under Ten Hag, and they haven't looked back since. Whereas Liverpool have been a lot better in the last few weeks. I didn't actually mention Fabinho. He had a good game as well the other night, and you'd imagine he'll start. That's the only one I could pick, though, that's going to start. I have a feeling Jordan Henderson will probably come back in. Bajcetic played the other night, had some moments, but he's still very young, and Casemiro, been there, done that.
Yeah.
He's not going to.
It's a big ask for Bajcetic to go up against Casemiro.
Yeah, and even just listen to former United players talking about going to Anfield. It doesn't matter what kind of form Liverpool are in. It's still a place that is hard to go to get a win, and it makes logically United should go there and win because they're so good defensively at the moment. They could sit in, soak up the Liverpool pressure, and Bruno Fernandes is so good at that first time ball on the half turn, and all he's got to do is just keep looking for Rashford, and he's going to have acres of space, and if there's somebody in front of him.
Well, that Konate Trent thing that you've spoken about, that's going to be an area where there's going to be a lot of balls launched into, and let's just see what happens. Yeah,
and look, Liverpool fans would be a lot more confident that Konate can cut it out than they would be if it was a Gomez or a Matip playing. But don't forget, they beat Manchester City earlier this season with Gomez and Milner as a part of their back four. I think 4:30 Sunday afternoon, I think it's like the Liverpool fans are going to be up for it. Now, the problem is they have moments in games, but they're not doing it over 90 minutes. So it's what can United do when Liverpool kind of almost the intensity comes out of them for a bit. We saw what Real Madrid did.
Keith, you see these games so often that we hype them up and then it's 0-0 and there's almost no chances. This does not feel like one of those times where these two teams are capable of being boring for 90 minutes.
No, I don't see it happening. It's probably a course I'm going to put on the game, but look, I think Liverpool will go and press. They'll go and stand on the halfway line. They'll press really, really high, and the ball you're talking about, when United do win it, the ball from Fernandes is not a difficult ball. When the Liverpool back four or back two, back three, whatever you want to call it, if they're standing on the halfway line, you've got 60-70 yards of green grass to hit the ball into, and Rashford's going to be quicker. He'll outpace any of them, so it's not a difficult ball. Liverpool's rock and roll football, the intensity in the middle of the park is a million miles off what it has been. To play the young lads, Bajcetic in there, he got schooled against Modric. I know Modric is one of the best players in the world. Casemiro's probably up there as well at the minute, probably more as a defensive midfielder, but it's a huge ask for such a young lad to be going in and playing them games, and he could be scarred from that Real Madrid game.
Who would you pick then if you're Klopp this week?
Well, Fabinho would definitely be in there. I think I'd put Henderson in there. Thiago's going to be missing, isn't he? I'm not too sure who they're going to put in there, but I would definitely put Fabinho, Henderson. Maybe I think he might play Harvey Elliott, but look, I'm a big fan of Harvey Elliott. I think in a couple of years' time he could be a top class midfielder, top class winger, whatever you want to call him. But at the minute, he needs to get there. Bajcetic needs to get there, and James Milner's in the team. No disrespect to James Milner. I played against him. He's a brilliant professional, good player. But if he's in the Liverpool team at this age, just big question marks.
Yeah, I'm a James Milner stan. Always have been. Think it's an incredible career he's managed to put together. But you really want him to be filling out the team 10 times the year when your third choice right back is injured, and it's yeah, great, and he's great in training, but not for games like this. And unfortunately, the Liverpool situation this year has been that he's played big games. Who's your midfield?
I think he might go Fabinho, Bajcetic and Henderson. Elliott played the other night and
seemed to play well. I only saw highlights.
He did, but the problem is Elliott just isn't good enough defensively. At least Bajcetic is good defensively. There was an incident in the first half of the game where there was a race on and he had to make this tackle, and he came away with the ball. There was even in the first few minutes, Alisson pinged one at him and chest high two Wolves players bearing down on him, and he still managed to turn away with it. You saw the turn he did against Newcastle.
Yeah.
So they're so confident in this lad. Van Dijk did the same with him with a pass as well in the game, where they don't care about. They don't think he's been one of the bright sparks for Liverpool's season.
Yeah.
I know it's a big ask, but I just think it's a case if they don't have anyone else. Naby Keita played last Saturday, and
I forgot they paid 55 million for
he's
Keita.
by far, I would think he's Liverpool's worst signing under Klopp in terms of
Money,
value.
expectation.
I'm not talking about those loan signings they made, the likes of Ozan Kabak or Arthur.
Melo,
I'm talking about.
Was he?
Yeah.
He's very close to coming back, but you know,
Will he play when he's back? Or do they respect him as a footballer? I can't tell.
it's hard to know. Again, they're very strange loan moves. Where look, he did get injured
Straight away, basically.
He played. I think he got 12 minutes against Napoli in that horror show in Naples, and then that was it.
And the shame of that, he decided, no, I'm not going to play anymore.
And he's been injured, but I just don't see any other options. I think Milner could be an option off the bench later in the game, but unless I just thought this season with all the injuries they had or players out of form, this was a chance for Klopp to go 4-2-3-1, a system he's played before, but he keeps going with the 4-3-3. I know he's tried 4-4-2 as well. But I'm looking at their fixtures. It's such a big game for both clubs. But Liverpool's fixtures, just looking at them, after that they've got Bournemouth away, City away, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, and Leeds away.
So if they were to go on a run, it would be amazing because it's going to catapult them up the table.
Yeah.
But equally, if this is the start of a blip or a bad period, then they can kiss Champions League qualification goodbye.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is the business end of the season. Liverpool and United, there's a 10-point gap between the two clubs. I actually think Liverpool will catch Spurs. I think Spurs will implode, and I don't think it'll be Liverpool brilliance that will get them Champions League football. I think it'll be pretty much handed to them by Spurs. I think Spurs will, I seen them against Sheffield United. They look surprised that they got a game off them, and like Sheffield United is a club I played for, Bramall Lane. Everybody knows you're going to Bramall Lane, you've got to get a game, whether it's tactically, physically, it's going to be a football game. And
they made 8 changes though, Sheffield United. Like, it wasn't even their strongest side. John Egan, I think, was suspended, but like from the league game at the weekend where they'd won, they made a raft of changes and they were still able to give Spurs their fill of it.
But that's the worrying thing. On paper, Spurs should have won that game handy. Even if both teams had their strongest teams out, which obviously Sheffield United didn't. Spurs they didn't look up for the fight. When you get out fought and passion, desire, everything, energy is with Sheffield United. It's very, very hard to go and say, I think Spurs will go and finish fourth. I really don't. I think they'll implode and Liverpool will catch them.
If Liverpool are going to catch them, though, they need to put pressure on those teams above them, and it starts with getting some kind of result from this. Like, maybe if they don't win, it's not a disaster if they draw, but if they were to get beaten and badly beaten, that's the type of thing that could really have a negative impact on them.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think about Liverpool. They've been in games, even the Real Madrid game, they're comfortably ahead in that game and then they go and get beaten 5-2. It's a thing that Jurgen Klopp doesn't seem to have too many thoughts about, is game management. You go 1-0 up, you go 2-0 up, you can't keep approaching the game the same way. You need to be a little bit more clever in things. And look, far be it from me to speak to Klopp about tactics. He's obviously far superior to me in that, but they just don't ever say, like, plan A is play football, plan B is play football, we're 2-0 up, let's keep attacking. You can just have periods in a game where you keep the ball, or you play long, or you just kill the tempo of things. And Liverpool, the rock and roll football is still 100 miles an hour, but the golden rule of football, this is what I tell my under-17s, if there's no pressure on the ball, you have to start dropping off. And at times in the middle of the pitch, there's no pressure on the ball because the intensity's not there, yet the defenders are still on the halfway line.
So explain that. If there's no pressure on the ball, what do you mean by you have to start dropping off?
If the ball is in the middle of the pitch and you're say Jordan Henderson is 2 or 3 yards off the ball, any professional player there can pick a pass. So Van Dijk, Kanate, whoever it is, they have to drop. You can't hold a high line if there's no pressure on the ball. That's the real 101 in defending. No pressure, start dropping. But Liverpool keep that high line.
Whose job is it to tell the midfield to press then? Is that like a knock on? So it's Van Dijk. And
it has to come from Van Dijk or the goalkeeper because they can see the whole pitch. So I would imagine that Van Dijk is shouting to press, but Klopp is obviously telling him to go and have a really, really high line. But as a player, if you're there and you can see that there's no pressure on the ball, you could be exposed in behind. So for me, I'm starting to drop off because a ball in front of you, they're not going to score in front of you. You can affect that. A ball in behind you with the likes of Marcus Rashford, that's danger number one.
To Phil's point earlier about Konate coming back into the team and this having an immediate knock-on impact on Trent. So it's only one game, small sample size, but now you have Virgil, who you hope is playing a bit more close to his best, who it's been a long time really since we've seen a sustained period from him at his very best for Liverpool. So you've got him and Konate. That's a massive transformation from the previous two, where they've got the credibility to tell everybody to do their job in midfield. Is it possible that we underrated the absence of those players and the absence of the forward players through injury, and that actually Liverpool are going to be fine, but you know there isn't a massive crisis. They're not bored of Klopp. They're not tired after last season. Really what happened was the most important players got injured together at the same time.
I do take that point. There has been a lot of injuries, but Chelsea have had a lot of injuries. Chelsea have an awful lot of injuries. Arsenal's best player in Gabriel Jesus has been injured, you know. And it's not just the personnel in terms of the injury, it's the way Liverpool are playing. I feel like clubs have sort of figured it out now and saying we can let them have the ball, they'll press us really high, put the ball into the channel and play from there. And it's the intensity's not there. I get that they have had injuries, but Klopp should have seen this coming as well. Look, we go back to the James Milner thing. There should be players in to fill that. And I know, like you say, the Arthur Mello and things like that, people have come in and got injured, but it's a bit of both here. I think Klopp should have seen this coming, should have filled holes before it happened. But look, if Liverpool were to somehow go and get fourth, like I think they will, I think they'll nick the Champions League positions, then it's not half bad season, because it's been really, really poor. So if they come out with Champions League football, there's some sort of a positive spin on it.
If they do come out with Champions League football, and we will talk Man United in a minute, Man United fans, don't worry. If they do come out with Champions League football, Phil, do they start next season as title contenders again, or is there a new normal with Liverpool where they're actually in a tier significantly below the title contenders?
Well, you think back to the season when they lost their centre halves and they rescued that and they finished third, and then last season they bring City all the way to the final day. And I get that they've had injuries, but a club that has ambitions to win titles shouldn't be derailed from injuries so drastically. If you have injuries, you adapt to the players that you have, and Klopp hasn't done that. And I think that would be a frustration for some Liverpool fans, where they think, you know, it's like you were saying, drop. That would have been my attitude with watching them at times this season. Like, why not drop? Because you have players that can play on the counter attack. Look at the goal that Salah scored against Everton. Núñez got the ball from an Everton corner and absolutely roasted Treacy and Phil, and then he sets up the goal. But then if you look at the Real Madrid game, if you look at Vinicius' goal, the first goal he scored, if you look at Benzema's first goal, Liverpool have numbers there.
Yeah.
But they're just ball watching. Benzema plays a 1-2 around them and they just let him go.
The header from the free kick would suggest that this is not a
so
brilliantly coached defensively team.
But even players back, they're still not playing with any intensity. And whereas if you watch United now on Sunday, they'll have players back, but as soon as you go into certain areas, you know that you'll be approached by United players. And I think Sandro Martinez has just transformed the way they defend as a unit, because he loves to defend. We obviously know Rafa Varane is an incredible defender, and when he's fit and available, but Martinez has just instilled that kind of nastiness, and he takes pride in his defending, and that rubs off on your teammates, where you're thinking, he's throwing himself in there, I have to do the same.
Well, I've got to impress this guy.
Absolutely.
Otherwise he's going to kick me in training.
Well, he strikes me as somebody that could line you up in training a few days after if he didn't put it in. But yeah, I just think if you can't use that as an like, injuries happen, and I get that, and all clubs suffer from injuries, but if Liverpool's title ambitions are based upon who's fit and available all the time, then it's not a great starting point.
Well, it's a bad business model, but I do think it might be the business model given how little money the owners have spent compared to the other big clubs that they're competing against. The net spend figure that keeps getting thrown out, it's a real thing. Like, it is a real thing, is that they're threadbare, and that there's been a bit of alchemy from the manager to get to this point, and he's like, oh, I can only do so much, I'm not a miracle worker.
Like, even the midfield, they've got numbers there, but numbers, like, there's quantity and quality.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I
So
accept
that's what's happening. That's why we've been talking about who would you start in midfield, because the options aren't great there.
No, it's not, and it's not obvious anymore. The way that midfield trio was exactly the midfield trio for ages, and you knew exactly what you were going to get from it. Right, this is the football kickoff with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport, and Premier Sports. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/off the ball. Keith, we haven't done enough on United here, given the run that they're on at the moment. There is a possibility, of course, that Manchester United are in a purple patch and that they'll come off their high heights. But there's also the possibility that this is the start of something incredible, that they get confidence from the cup win, they get confidence from the cup comeback, and that Garnacho, I mean, that was a good finish. That was good.
Yeah, well, it was a really good finish. The force touch was excellent. As soon as he puts it out, you think he's going to bend this into the corner. He done it outstanding. It was really, really good. And under Ten Hag, the first 2 games of the season when he got beat by Brighton and Brentford, they seem a long, long time ago. It's chalk and cheese since then. Like I said, beat Barcelona in Europe over 2 legs. Everybody's talking about Rashford. His goals have obviously been brilliant. His performances have been brilliant. But the big one for me is Casemiro. When he first came in, he played a game and he looked a little bit heavy. He looked a little bit lethargic, and you're thinking he might be just coming here for a last paycheck and just, setting off into the sunset. It's been anything but. He seems fit now. He seems hungry. And it's not just Casemiro. You look at like Ten Hag, I always look at Eddie Howe and Newcastle and the players he's improved. You look at the players that Ten Hag's improved at United. Rashford, obviously, Casemiro, Luke Shaw. Like he at one point under Mourinho, he was a laughing stock at United, but he's brilliant now. Left back, centre half, wherever you want to play him. Fred is even really, really good, and Bruno Fernandes as well looks really good. So I don't think this is a purple patch. I think this is the start of something good at United. I think I don't want to already finished this season, but next season I think will be big for United. They're not out of the title race this
I don't think
season,
they're out of the title race either. I think that there's a possibility that something weird is happening at Manchester City, so Arsenal then would need not to be flaky at some point. They're going to be flaky at some point. Maybe their flakiness is over, I don't know, but
yeah, well, even like we've all said that Arsenal were going to hit a bit of a bump in the road. I wasn't so sure that the couple of losses they had was a bump, because they had 2 losses to Manchester City. Very, very hard to call that a bump.
And one of them was in the cup game, yeah.
One of them was a cup game. They got beat by Brentford. That Ivan Toney's goal was offside. So that there's a round where Arsenal win that game. And then they got beat by Everton, which was the Sean Dyche new manager bounce. So I can understand that. Yeah. So very, very hard to say Arsenal have gone through a blip. But look, I don't know. I don't think Arsenal... I think Arsenal could go and do it. The more I watch them during the week, and yeah, I think they're playing better football in City at the minute. They're more attractive to watch.
This Bournemouth game is 3 o'clock tomorrow on Premier Sports. That's a routine victory for Arsenal, right? It just has to be. There can't be anything. The Leicester game was 1-0, I think, but they were better value. I didn't see any of the Leicester game properly, so I don't know, but everybody said they were good value for that, and it could have been easier. Yeah,
they were brilliant. They were really, really good against Leicester. They were brilliant. The way it's Zinchenko, like when you sit down and you tell players how to set up and pass from A to B to C, Arsenal are doing it. It's like PlayStation football at time. It's so easy, so controlled. And like I say, Zinchenko starts at left back. Next thing you know, he's a defensive midfielder, attacking midfielder, wide on the right. The way he plays the ball into Saka for the goal, when he turns and hits it, it's beautiful football. It really is. And again, you're looking at Arteta. He's a brilliant manager. Who's he improving? Almost everybody in that team has improved under him. And Martinelli, Saka, Xhaka, Odegaard, Trossard has hit the ground running. And people will say, well, he was at Brighton, he knows the Premier League. It's not as easy as that, really. Not. He's come into a new club and hit the ground running. And again, even Ben White, I wasn't a big fan of Ben White when he first came in the door at Arsenal, but playing him as a centre half, he got bullied at Brighton, but then moved him out to right back. And he looks brilliant, looks really, really good, very athletic, very aggressive when he's getting up against wingers. And yeah, a lot to like about Arsenal. So yeah, they'll probably lose tomorrow now.
Well, there you go. And the other thing that everybody's like, they don't know what it takes to win a league. But actually, the players who came in from City, and like Jorginho's been at the top level of world football, understands exactly what big games are about and what pressure is about. And Arteta was obviously at City for a long period of time. So while he wasn't the number one, he does understand largely what it takes.
Yeah, and I think even the last couple of weeks, Eddie Nketiah, his goals have dried up a bit, so he's been taken out of the team, and I think that was a good decision. And then you have Trossard coming in and basically playing through the centre, but him and Martinelli swap roles, and Martinelli's back scoring goals. That goal, I know, was a tap in against Villa, and it sealed the game, and you won't get an easier goal. But since then, he's scored a couple of goals.
We were celebrating on the way in. That's like that. There's something. That wasn't your run of the mill tap in. It's like it's like
it was a bit, but that was such a crucial win. I felt it was off the back of the City game. They were behind twice. They win. Jorginho obviously has a key role in the third goal, but now Thomas Partey's back. Then you've Martinelli scoring goals again. Trossard's there. Nketiah, you can play him on Thursday in the Europa League against Sporting. Not many people are talking about Arsenal and the Europa League because it seems all the focus is on the Premier League, but Arsenal have a very good chance of winning that as well. Wouldn't be bad now if we got an Arsenal-Manchester United final. That would be quite a tasty one. But yeah, you'd imagine that they'll just go there tomorrow. They'll turn up at the Emirates tomorrow and they'll just take care of business against a Bournemouth team that I would have picked at the start of the season to go down, and I haven't changed my mind. And they were patient against Everton, and as soon as they got the first goal, just the atmosphere even at the Emirates, apart from City, they're just so hard to beat at the Emirates, and I think that'll be key for them. They've a few tricky away games to negotiate. Obviously the trip to City in April is going to be the big game, you feel, but by then who knows, Arsenal could be further ahead. Just looking at their fixtures, they've got Fulham next weekend, which could be a tricky one coming off the back of the Sporting game, but then they've got Palace and Leeds at home, and then they go to Anfield. Who knows what form Liverpool will be in by then, but Arteta's talked about that being the toughest place to go since he's been Arsenal manager, but Liverpool aren't what they were even last season.
Yeah. So sorry, it's Bournemouth, Fulham, Leeds and Palace.
Yeah.
I mean,
if they get 12 points from those games, then City are starting to run out of games, plus City could drop points.
Speaking of City, they've got Newcastle tomorrow morning at 12:30. We've talked before about the oddness of playing games at 12:30. What, early kickoffs did you have many of them?
Yeah, I had a couple. It doesn't really bother players. You're eating scrambled egg and chicken.
So you're not having like pasta anymore. It's like, I've got a bowl of pasta at 8 o'clock for breakfast. No,
well, you can. It's whatever you want, really, you can eat. But, for me, it would be dry pasta, chicken, scrambled egg, 8 o'clock in the morning. It's not great, but you have to put the fuel into the engine or it won't go. So that's probably the only thing, is you're up a little bit earlier. It's not a big deal at all.
Is it not? Because sometimes you see games where it's 3-0 after 15 minutes and what the hell happened here? And it's just
then any old excuse comes out. I was up early this morning, the scrambled egg was a bit runny. It's footballers will use any excuse they can. It really means nothing getting up out of bed a little bit earlier.
Okay, on that note, City against Newcastle is one of those games though where we don't know really what to expect from either team in terms of their form at the moment, or certainly the form of Newcastle in particular has not been great, and yet they were okay in the cup final. Like they weren't a disaster. It wasn't like Newcastle in the 99 cup final. It was they could have scored, they created chances, they had a goalkeeper making essentially a weird kind of comeback out of nowhere, so I give them some credit for that performance, as opposed to just like, oh, that was a disaster, they choked. I don't think they did choke.
No, they didn't choke. There was probably a 10-minute period in the game where Newcastle come off it a little bit and they got punished. That was it, and that's what it is at the top level. There's fine margins in it. Newcastle didn't freeze, but there was periods in the game where you're thinking this isn't great. But look, the worrying thing for me in terms of the Premier League, and even Eddie Howe has said it, that the cup final has been a distraction over the last couple of weeks. He didn't want it to be, but it has been a distraction, and I suppose that's only human, and it's not a big deal if Newcastle go and get straight on the horse now after it. Will they do it against Manchester City? I'm not so sure. They've started to leak goals again, which defensively was a big thing. Sven Botman back there, Dan Bourne, Kieran Trippier, they look really, really solid. They're just starting to look a little bit, I don't want to say flaky, but they're starting to look a little bit more like you can score goals against them now. And Manchester City, with the way they score goals, if anybody can pierce holes in your defence, it will be them. So yeah, look, Newcastle out of form, but I wouldn't put it past them. I think the reverse fixture was a 3-3 draw earlier in the season.
Yeah, it was a wild game.
Yeah, that was a great game. And the one thing I know about Eddie Howe and Newcastle is he won't come there and park the bus. He'll be going there to try and swing some digs. So I think we could get a high scoring game again.
Eddie Howe has got relentless credit for the job that he's done, but the owners were at the game, at the cup final. they're there for the parade. You know, there's like kisses for the players. There's like it's if you don't recover from this, if you bring the team to the cup final, and you were in the Champions League places, and then you don't seal the deal, then they're like, well, you did a good job, but there are great managers out there, and like it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that they just tail off and they're like, thanks very much for your work, Eddie, it's been excellent, but we're a super club and we want Pochettino, or we want like something shiny and new, because they're like the owners are pulling money from the ground and they expect everything to be successful straight away.
I get your point, but I think
I wouldn't do it.
No, I think I wouldn't do it either.
The reality is different, right?
Yeah, the reality is different, but the one things that I would caution the Newcastle fans is don't go into cuckoo land just yet. You know, you're doing very well. You've got to a cup final. You're sitting fourth in the league, everything, or fifth in the league. You're doing really, really well, but you aren't at that top table just yet. You have the bank balance to be at the top table, but you aren't there in terms of the pitch just yet. So for me, they're punching above their weight. Like when you look at Longstaff, I know Joe Linton's been really good. There's certain players still in that if Newcastle were to go and pick 2 or 3 more decent players, you're thinking, yeah, these are a real team. They look good, but they're a little bit off, and I don't think they'll finish in the top 6. I think the cup has hurt them. I do think they'll be wounded by that. And a loss to City, you know, if City go and beat them, you know, 4-5-2, something like that, then, you know, it could just leave a lasting effect on them. And Eddie Howe is not a manager who will go and say, right, we need to be a little bit more defensively solid. Although, you know, defensively they have been excellent. It's not something that Eddie Howe would work on day to day. It's more of an individual thing. And yeah, I can see Howe's been picked in Newcastle, but look, they're doing excellent. I just hope the fans, the Newcastle fans, the Newcastle owners take a step back and have a full look at the picture and say, you know, we're probably punching above our weight at this moment in time.
City's form, beaten by Spurs and then won games, obviously beat Arsenal, beat Villa, drew at Forest, drew at Leipzig, and then they beat Bournemouth and they won the cup game. So it's been up and down. Yeah,
one interesting thing in the last couple of games is Phil Foden. So he's come back in after the World Cup. You remember at the World Cup he wasn't starting for England and everyone was like, yeah, I got Phil Foden in, and then he starts games, comes back from the World Cup and he's not playing for City, and you're thinking, what's going on? Now the last couple of games he's come in and he's looked like the Phil Foden we know. He talked about having a little bit of pain and an injury. That's gone now, and he's starting to score goals again. So I think with City, why, if you were asking me today who's going to win the league, I'd still say City, because I think they're just timing it just right in terms of the Champions League. I know they're still in the last 8 of the FA Cup. You'd fancy them to beat Burnley in the quarters and then maybe in the semi-finals. But it's all about the Champions League and the Premier League for Guardiola. And I just think we're at the business end. This is where they're going to step up. Now, they're definitely not as impressive as they have been the last couple of seasons, where when I say I think they're going to win the league, I wouldn't have as much confidence as I would have had saying that last season. And that's just because there's just a few things, like a few players have gone out, and there's just a few players, like the whole Haaland thing, trying to get the best out of him.
Yeah, we had Graham Hunter on recently, and he was saying like it just feels like that some of the players believe that Pep seems to be playing favourites a bit. What's that like in a dressing room?
It's not nice. I've been on the receiving end where I'm not one of the favourites a couple of times, and it's not nice. But
is there anything you can do to interrupt the pattern, or is it just you just feel like there's no fair crack of the whip no matter what happens?
But sometimes that's what you feel personally. I'm sure managers never actually, you know, try to impose that on players. But for me, you know, Eddie Howe came into Burnley and he brought Junior Stanislas from Bournemouth with him on loan, and I thought, well, if he's been at Bournemouth and he's bringing him with him, there's only going to be one left winger starting here. So I always thought that, you know, Junior was one of Eddie's boys and I was, you know, never going to play, and them sort of things can go into the dressing room. But I can't see it being too much of the big one for me with Pep is the Cancelo going to Bayern Munich. I just don't understand it. I really don't, especially when you're popping Bernardo Silva left back. And I've heard him talk, Bernardo Silva is very, very clever. He is. He's a brilliant player. Yeah. But you can't just throw him left back against Bukayo Saka and think everything's going to be all right. And I know City did okay in that game, but it's just mental.
Only when they changed, they went back to their...
Even the goal against Forest, that was Bernardo Silva's fault. The ball coming in at the last minute, that's his fault. And Pep will always say, you know, he done well in the attacking sense. He started the goal, but if you'd had a natural left back there, that cross doesn't come in.
Did Junior Stanislas play every game?
a lot more than me anyway.
Did he? Yeah.
A lot more than me, yeah.
And did you have to go and have a word with Eddie Howe and say, here, listen, or like, is that pointless?
Well, at the time I felt it was pointless. I'm sure, in hindsight I probably should have sat him down and told him how I felt, and we probably could have bashed something out. But no, I done the total opposite, and what a good footballer should have done, and just hit the drink instead. So yeah, not a great attitude for me, but hindsight's a wonderful thing.
And did Eddie Howe ever tell you, like, you'll get in if you do this, this and this?
He used to tell me, when you get fit, you can play. You'll be back in the team. But this is while I was in the reserve team at the time. So, yeah, he used to dangle a carrot in front of me. And this is what I always say about how good of a manager Sean Dyche is. Eddie Howe would say you'll be in the team when you're fit, and go off and get fit. But Dyche would tell me you'll be in the team when you're fit. Let's go on a run together.
Right.
So that little thing is like, well, he wants me to succeed at this club rather than he wants me, but when I'm ready, whereas Dyche was prepared to push me through and get me ready. It's just that little personal touch for me was excellent. Just somebody taking it's
a subtle enough difference, but it's important.
It was for me anyway. Yeah, footballers they're crazy animals at times, and I was quite crazy, but Dyche just had that. His man management was second to none.
Well, because this week they were talking about the 13 kilometres that Manchester United ran less in, was it the Bournemouth game?
Brentford game.
The Brentford game, sorry, the Brentford game. And then he made them run the 13k. It came out this week that he ran the 13k with them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe I'd missed that detail at the time, but it was like, he's obviously not a full-time professional athlete, but it was like, I'm willing to do this as well. All these things that, if they work, they seem like genius. But at least you're building up some pattern of like, I'm going to be reliable, I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to be hard. But
it's just giving a message across that we're all in this together. The manager obviously can't play on a Saturday or a Tuesday, whenever it is, but if there's a punishment to be done, he's not saying you've lost the game, you go and run, we lost the game, we'll go and run, and it just makes it feel like more of a tight-knit group. Yeah,
because the Ten Hag thing, the other thing that came out was that he did an amazing interview with Manchester United, blew them away. Darren Fletcher's there, and apparently he's like, yeah, you're saying all the right things. But apparently it also has come out that he did a terrible interview with Spurs. Now, maybe Spurs were asking the wrong stupid questions. I don't know. Maybe an interview is only as good as the interviewer, Yeah,
I think there could be a change of manager at Spurs again. It's soon enough anyway, so they'll be doing that interview process again.
Well, hopefully they've perfected the art. The final game on TV on Saturday that we're talking about is Southampton against Leicester. There's not a whole heap to say about this. They changed the goalkeeper for the cup game during the week. We hope it's just a cup thing, really.
Yeah, I think it was.
You would have thought so.
Yeah. I'm not that we're biased or anything.
Although I like Bazunu at times this season has let in a few goals where I thought he should. And last week against Leeds, I thought he was poor for the goal. He's still young. He's going to make mistakes. We've just got such high expectations of him because we've seen him at international level where he's been so good for Ireland.
I saw one of the papers put a 40 to 50 million valuation. Maybe it was 30 to 40 valuation alongside Caoimhín Kelleher. That's madness, right?
For a number 2 goalkeeper?
Yeah, it's madness. It is madness, isn't it?
If he was going to become a number 1, I saw a few teams talking about, or a few people saying he should go to, who was it, Emmanuel Petit I saw during the week saying Spurs should go after him.
Finger on the pulse, Manu Petit with English football, it feels like.
Yeah, and he was talking about Spurs and he could be part of a legacy, and I was like, well, at the moment there's no legacy there. Not that there won't be with Conte, but I get Spurs are one of the biggest clubs in the league, so I can get why it would look like a good move.
But you'd get him for 10 or 12 million, right, wouldn't you?
Liverpool got 12 million for Danny Ward, who's going to be in goal tomorrow for Leicester, and I'd say he's at the bottom end of goalkeepers in the Premier League.
All right, so maybe
and that's without inflation. That's a good few years ago.
Okay. Nottingham Forest versus Everton. You're on co-coms for this one on Sunday. Keith, this game is live on telly on Sky Sports, and Nathan alongside you. I think Forest are safe. No,
not yet. Look, Steve Cooper's doing a really good job, because with the amount of players that have come in the building, gone out of the building, I really didn't give them much hope of staying up this year. But Steve Cooper are really, really good. If Everton were at home, I'd be leaning heavily towards Everton winning this game. But the fact that Forest are at home, they're a different animal. They've had 25 points this season. 19 of them have been picked up at home. The majority of their goals are scored at home. They don't travel very well. And the flip side of that, Everton don't travel very well. So Everton going there struggling for goals. I'm not sure. I can't see where the goal's coming from. They need Calvert-Lewin back. They need him fit. I know he's still he's flirting with coming back. He's a bit of a hamstring problem, but he's so integral to what they do. If Dyche can get him into the right areas, because I think we can all say, even the biggest Frank Lampard fan would say there's a bit of a better shape about everything at the minute. Even I know they got trounced 4-0 by Arsenal during the week, but they won't play Arsenal every week. Struggling to see where the goals come from, but look, I think Forest are there for the taking. I think Forest feel like they're in a better place, so they might be a little bit more flaky, and I think Everton will have the bit between their teeth and just somehow get something out of the game. I'm not saying they'll go and win it, but I don't think they'll be beat.
Is Todd Bowley looking at the job that Cooper's done, Phil, and thinking, why can't you just do that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole Chelsea situation is bizarre, and that they're obviously playing Leeds tomorrow, Chelsea, and I kind of feel like that's their last league game before the Dortmund one, and I think this is it. Like, it's kind of make or break for Potter, those two games. That I just have a feeling that the players will pull it out for the Champions League, because players will be thinking, this is the Champions League. Even if Potter is gone in a few weeks, we want to still be in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And as good as Dortmund are, and as well, like, Chelsea have enough to beat them. But going back to Forest, their home form has been brilliant, unbeaten in 8, and they're just so hard to beat at the City Ground. So I'd be leaning towards Forest. Everton, I know you said it, Keith, when Dyche came in, the goals were going to be the worry, and if you look at the goals that they've got since Dyche came in, the Tarkowski goal came from a header, the Seamus Coleman goal, and they're not scoring any goals.
No.
So with Calvert-Lewin, you're probably desperate to get him back in.
It's just been so long since we've seen him play it.
Yeah, but he was brilliant in that Arsenal game where he was occupying 2 defenders, whereas Neil Maupay, you can go one-on-one with him.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the ball down the channel and even the ball in the air that Calvert-Lewin is so good. But you have to be patient with him, because you have to just say, right, you might have to sit out one more game, but they need him for the run-in. They need him for the last 10 games of the season if they're going to have any chance, I think.
All right, good stuff. Keith, Phil, thanks a million, lads. The football kick-off with Sky every Friday around about 11:30. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/off the ball.
The football kick-off.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.